The morning sun barely pierced through heavy clouds over Pennsylvania Avenue, reflecting off the glass facades of government buildings. Inside the James S. Brady Press briefing room, journalists buzzed with anticipation. Microphones were tested, cameras hummed, and the air was thick with the scent of coffee and tension. Today, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat from Texas, was set to make a statement, and rumors promised an explosion. Her name had dominated headlines for weeks, a fierce critic of President Donald Trump, who had returned to the White House just 3 months earlier. She wasn't afraid to say what others only whispered. But this time, everyone expected something bigger. Jasmine entered the room at precisely 10 a.m. Her navy blue suit contrasted sharply with her white blouse, and her confident stride drew cameras like sunflowers turning toward the sun. She stopped at the podium, adjusted the microphone, and surveyed the packed room. The journalists froze, sensing history in the making. "Good morning," she began, her voice calm but as firm as steel. "I stand here not as a politician, but as an American who believes in justice. Today, I will say what many are afraid to voice. Donald Trump should not be the President of the United States." The room erupted in whispers and the clicking of cameras. Jasmine raised a hand, commanding silence. This isn't about parties or ideologies. It's about principles, about truth, about our country deserving a leader who unites, not divides. And I'm prepared to prove why. She pulled a sheet of paper from her pocket, placed it on the podium, and looked directly into the nearest camera. "I have obtained documents that reveal corruption at the highest levels of this administration. They involve not just financial misconduct, but also pressure on government institutions. I am turning these documents over to the FBI today." Shock rippled through the room. A journalist from the Washington Post leapt to his feet. "Congresswoman Crockett, are you accusing the president of a crime? Do you have proof?" Jasmine gave a slight smile, but her eyes burned with resolve. "I'm not making accusations. I'm presenting facts. Proof? It's in those documents. And trust me, there's enough to make everyone think twice." In the back, a man in a gray suit stood, his face tense. It was Paul Green, a political strategist, known for his ties to the Trump administration. He wasn't invited, but his presence didn't surprise Jasmine. She knew the White House was watching her every move. "Congresswoman," Green began, his voice oily, "do you realize the consequences of such statements? This could be seen as slander. Are you prepared for lawsuits, for the end of your career?" The room went still. Jasmine leaned into the microphone, her voice quieter but all the more piercing. "Mr. Green, I'm ready for anything you or your friends try to throw at me. But you know what? I'm not afraid, because the truth is stronger than your threats." Green sat down, his face flushed. Journalists scribbled furiously, and social media exploded with hashtags #CrockettSpeaks and #TruthUnleashed. But Jasmine knew this was only the beginning. Her statement had lit a fire, and now she would have to face the storm. After the press conference, an hour later, Jasmine sat in her office in the Capitol building. Outside, Washington hummed, car horns, distant sirens, and the murmur of protesters already gathering near the Capitol. Her phone was flooded with messages. Democratic colleagues sent words of support, Republicans demanded apologies, and anonymous numbers sent threats. She silenced it and leaned back in her chair, inhaling the scent of old wood and paper that permeated her office. Her assistant Layla, a young woman from Dallas with eyes blazing with excitement, burst into the room. "Jasmine, have you seen what's happening online? Your words are being quoted everywhere, from CNN to Fox. But," she hesitated, "there's backlash too. Some bloggers are calling you a traitor. And the White House is preparing a statement saying you made it all up for fame." Jasmine sighed, but her face remained calm. "Layla, I knew this was coming. They'll try to spin it like I'm crazy or attention hungry. But I'm not playing their game. We keep going. Keep going." Layla raised her eyebrows. "You just challenged the president. What could be bigger?" Jasmine stood, walked to the window, and looked at the crowd below. Among the protesters were people with signs, "Truth or Slander" and "Crockett for Justice." She turned back to Layla. "I want to talk to the people. Not journalists, not politicians, ordinary Americans. Set up a meeting in Dallas. I'm going home." Dallas, Texas, 3 days later. The community center hall in South Dallas was packed. The scent of coffee and freshly baked donuts mingled with sweat and tension. Elderly folks, workers, students, all had come to hear Jasmine. Old photos of the city hung on the walls, and a soft jazz melody played through the speakers as people took their seats. Most attendees were over 55, voters who remembered a time when politics felt less chaotic. They whispered, clutching newspapers with headlines like "Crockett accuses Trump," "Truth or Provocation." Jasmine stepped onto the stage without notes, only a microphone in hand. Her gaze was open, but it carried the weight of the past few days. "I know you've heard a lot about my statement," she began. "Some say I'm a hero. Others say I'm lying for fame. But I'm here to tell you the truth. I did this because I believe in us. In you." The room fell silent. An older man in the front row, William, a Vietnam veteran, furrowed his brow. "Congresswoman, I respect your courage, but why do you think you can take on the president? He's got an army of lawyers, media, money. What do you have?" Jasmine nodded, as if she'd expected the question. "I have you, William, and thousands like you. People who want their voices heard. I don't want to fight Trump in courtrooms or on talk shows. I want us to ask together, is this the America we want to leave our children?" A middle-aged woman, Martha, raised her hand. "But how can we trust you? You talk about documents, but we haven't seen them. What if it's just politics?" Jasmine took a deep breath. She knew this moment could change everything. Instead of defending herself, she stepped forward. "Martha, I understand your doubt. I felt the same when I first saw those documents. But I promise, I won't stop until the truth comes out. And I want you with me, not as voters, but as partners." The room buzzed. Some clapped, others whispered, but Jasmine sensed some were starting to believe her. Then the hall's doors swung open. 2 men in dark suits entered, their faces impassive. One, with gray hair and a cold stare, approached the stage. "Congresswoman Crockett, we need to talk." "Now," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. Jasmine's heart pounded, but she didn't back down. She turned to the microphone. "Gentlemen, if you have something to say it here, in front of these people." The crowd erupted in applause. The man in the suit scowled but didn't retreat. The tension in the room was palpable, like the calm before a storm. The community center hall in South Dallas thrummed like a beehive. The scent of coffee and donuts mixed with the thick tension hanging in the air, as heavy as Texas dust. Jasmine Crockett stood on the stage, microphone in hand, her eyes locked on the 2 men in dark suits who had barged into the room. The crowd froze, their gazes darting between the Congresswoman and the strangers. The applause that had erupted after her bold challenge faded, leaving only an oppressive silence. The gray-haired man, the one who spoke first, stepped closer to the stage. His face was cold, but a flicker of uncertainty glinted in his eyes. He raised a hand, as if to calm the crowd, but his voice was sharp. "Congresswoman Crockett, this isn't a game. Your statements at the press conference have jeopardized national security. We're from the Department of Justice, and we need you to come with us. Immediately." The room exploded with outraged shouts. William, the veteran in the front row, shot to his feet, his Marine Corps cap slipping to one side. "National security, my ass. She spoke the truth about corruption. You think we're blind here?" His voice trembled with anger, but it carried the strength of someone who'd seen too much injustice. Jasmine raised a hand, calling for silence. Her heart raced, but she refused to let fear take over. She knew every move she made was being recorded by dozens of smartphones in the room, and those clips would spread across X and YouTube within minutes. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice steady but piercing like an arrow, "if you're from the Department of Justice, show your credentials. And explain how the truth about corruption threatens national security. We're listening." The crowd roared in approval. The younger man, with a short haircut and a nervous glance, put a hand on his colleague's shoulder, as if urging restraint. But the gray-haired man only scowled and pulled a leather wallet from his pocket. He flashed a badge, but so quickly that no one in the room could make out the details. "This isn't the place for discussion," he said. "You either come with us voluntarily, or we'll return with a warrant." Jasmine felt a chill run down her spine. She knew the White House wouldn't sit idly by after her press conference. But to go this far, sending men who looked more like hired muscle than federal agents? That was new. She glanced at the crowd. Martha, the woman who had doubted her, now clutched her purse, her eyes filled with worry. William stood with his hands on his hips, ready to argue with anyone. And in the back, a young woman filmed everything on her phone, her face glowing with awe. Jasmine took a deep breath, catching the scent of the old wooden stage mixed with her own perfume, a faint jasmine note she wore in honor of her name. She couldn't let these men intimidate her or the crowd. "If you have a warrant, show it," she said, her voice growing louder. "If not, you're just two men trying to bully a woman in front of her community. And you know what? In Dallas, we don't take kindly to that." The room erupted in cheers, some even whistling. The gray-haired man's lips tightened, his face reddening. He turned to his partner and whispered something. The younger man nodded, and they both headed for the exit, casting a glance at Jasmine that promised this wasn't over. As the doors closed behind them, Jasmine turned back to the microphone. "Friends," she said, her voice warm but laced with steel, "this is what they do when they're scared. They threaten, they pressure, they try to silence us. But I won't be silenced, and I know you won't either." William raised a fist, and the crowd roared again. But Jasmine knew this was just the beginning. Her press conference had set off a chain of events she couldn't fully control. And now she had to act fast. That same evening, Jasmine's office in Dallas. The sun was setting, painting the Dallas sky in shades of orange and pink. Jasmine sat at her desk in her small office, cluttered with papers, books, and family photos. Outside, the city hummed, car horns, distant sirens, and the faint sound of a street musician's saxophone. Her phone was still blowing up with notifications, but she ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. Layla sat across from her, scrolling through a tablet. "Jasmine, have you seen X? Your speech at the community center already has 2 million views. People are calling you the Lioness of Dallas." "But," Layla sighed, "there's A2. Some bloggers say you faked the documents. And the White House just released a statement claiming your accusations are a baseless attack on democracy." Jasmine rubbed her temples. She hadn't slept properly in 3 days, and the dark circles under her eyes were becoming more noticeable. But giving up wasn't an option. "Layla, I knew they'd say that. But the documents are real. I've seen them with my own eyes, contracts, emails, meeting records. They show how people in Trump's circle pressured judges and local officials to bury investigations into their finances." Layla leaned closer, her voice dropping. "What if they destroy those documents? Or discredit you? Jasmine, I've seen how this works. They can make it so no one believes you." Jasmine smiled, though exhaustion tinged her expression. "That's why I'm not relying on just the documents. I'm relying on the people. Today, in that hall, I saw how they listened. They want the truth, Layla, and I'm going to give it to them." She opened her laptop and began typing. Layla looked at her, confused. "What are you doing?" "Writing an open letter," Jasmine replied, her eyes fixed on the screen. "I'm inviting everyone, journalists, activists, everyday citizens, to join me. We're holding public hearings right here in Dallas. I want people to see the evidence for themselves." Layla shook her head, but a spark lit her eyes. "You're crazy, but I'm with you." The next day, South Dallas. News of Jasmine's open letter spread like wildfire. By noon, the local park where she planned the hearings was filled with people. Retirees sat in folding chairs, holding signs that read "Truth for America." Young people filmed on their phones, and local musicians played blues, adding warmth and hope to the atmosphere. The scent of barbecue from food trucks mingled with fresh grass, and children's laughter echoed over the crowd's murmur. Jasmine stood on an improvised stage, a simple platform adorned with American flags and flowers. Beside her sat local activists and a lawyer named Edward, who had agreed to help with the legal side. She held a folder with copies of the documents she'd sent to the FBI, but she knew the real power lay in the people before her. "Today we're not here to accuse," she began, her voice booming through the speakers. "We're here to ask, do we deserve the truth? I say yes." The crowd cheered, but suddenly a commotion erupted at the park's edge. A group of counter-protesters, men and women in red caps with pro-Trump slogans, pushed through the crowd. They held signs, "Crockett lies," and "Protect our president." One of them, a burly man with an eagle tattoo on his arm, shouted, "You're a traitor, Crockett. Your documents are fake, and you know it." Jasmine felt the crowd's tension spike. Some of her supporters began shouting back, and the situation threatened to spiral out of control. But she raised a hand, her calm gesture silencing everyone. "Sir," she said, addressing the man with the tattoo, "I invite you to the stage. Tell us why you don't believe me. Let's talk." The crowd froze. The man, clearly not expecting this, scowled but stepped forward under the weight of onlookers' stares. His name was Roy, and he turned out to be a local auto mechanic who had supported Trump since 2016. "I don't trust you because you're a Democrat," he began, his voice gruff but carrying a hint of sincerity. "All of you lie to bring down our president. Where's your proof?" Jasmine opened her folder and handed him a document, a printout of an email detailing pressure on a judge in a financial misconduct case. She passed it to Roy. "Read it. This is just one of hundreds. And I'm ready to show them to everyone." Roy glanced at the paper, his brows furrowing. He wasn't a lawyer, but even he could tell the email looked real. The crowd waited, holding its breath. This could be fake," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Jasmine nodded. "I understand why you doubt it. I would too, but I invite you to stay. Look at all the documents. Ask questions. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But if I'm right, don't you deserve to know?" Roy stood, clutching the paper, his face conflicted. The crowd erupted in applause, not just for Jasmine, but for a moment when two people, divided by politics, began to listen. Later that day, the hearings continued into the evening. Jasmine and Edward answered questions, showed documents, and explained complex legal terms in plain language. Roy stayed, sitting in the front row, silent but watching intently. Martha, who had doubted Jasmine earlier, now took notes, her face glowing with enthusiasm. William handed out water to volunteers, muttering, "Damn, this woman's the real deal." But Jasmine knew victory was far off. That evening, as she returned to her office, Layla greeted her with alarming news. "Jasmine, the FBI confirmed they received your documents. But there's a problem. Someone in Congress, close to the White House, filed a request to investigate you for leaking classified information." Jasmine froze. She knew the White House would hit back, but not this fast. She sat at her desk, exhaustion settling over her like a heavy blanket. "They want me to back down," she said quietly. "But I can't." Layla put a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone. Look at X. People are forming support groups across the country. They're calling it the Truth Movement." Jasmine opened her tablet and saw thousands of posts with hashtag #TruthWithCrockett. Photos from the park, videos of her exchange with Roy, quotes from her speech. And among them, a post from an anonymous user. "Crockett, hold on. We know more than you think. You'll get new evidence soon." She set the tablet down, her heart racing. Whoever this was, they gave her hope. But with hope came the realization that the stakes had just gotten higher. A week after the Dallas hearings, time blurred into a whirlwind. Jasmine Crockett barely had a moment to breathe. Her office in South Dallas had become a hub of activity. Volunteers sorted letters of support. Lawyers prepared defenses against the classified information leak accusations. And Layla struggled to keep up with media requests. Outside, the city pulsed, car horns, distant street musicians, and the chants of protesters who gathered daily, holding signs like Truth with Crockett and America for Justice. The scent of coffee brewing non-stop in the office machine mingled with the smell of paper and dust, creating an atmosphere of tense but vibrant struggle. Jasmine sat at her desk, scrolling through new posts on X. The hashtag Truth with Crockett had gone viral, and her open letter to Americans was quoted from local papers to international outlets. But the most valuable was that anonymous post from last week. "You'll get new evidence soon." She didn't know who it was, but her gut told her this person was the key to the next step. That evening, as the sun painted the Dallas sky crimson, there was a knock at the office door. Layla opened it and froze. Standing there was Roy, the mechanic who had called Jasmine a liar a week ago. His red cap was gone, replaced by a plain gray baseball cap, and he held a tattered envelope. Behind him stood Martha, the woman who had doubted Jasmine at the hearings. Her face was calm, but her eyes shone with determination. "We need to talk to the Congresswoman," Roy said, his voice low but firm. Jasmine rose from her desk, her heart pounding. She invited them in and offered seats. Roy placed the envelope on the table but didn't open it. "I've been thinking a lot since that day in the park," he began, avoiding her gaze. "I didn't want to believe you. But that email you gave me, it stuck with me. I showed it to a friend who works at a law firm. He said it looks legit. And then," he sighed, "I got this." He nodded at the envelope. Jasmine carefully picked it up and opened it. Inside were printouts of bank transactions and several photos showing a man resembling a senior Trump administration official handing a folder to another person in a dark alley. On the back of one photo was a handwritten note. "This is just the start. Keep going." "Someone left this in my truck," Roy said. "I don't know who, but I figured. If you're right, I can't just stand by." Martha nodded, her voice soft but resolute. "I doubted you too, Jasmine. But after the hearings, I started reading, talking to people. My son, he's a college student, showed me posts on X where others are sharing similar evidence. We want to help." Jasmine felt warmth spread through her chest. She looked at Roy and Martha, two people who, a week ago, stood on opposite sides, and realized this was bigger than her fight. It was a moment when ordinary Americans were coming together. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "This means more than you know." Washington, D.C., 2 days later. Jasmine returned to the Capitol to testify at a special congressional hearing. The accusations of leaking classified information had gained traction. But Edward and a team of volunteers had gathered enough evidence to prove the documents she sent to the FBI contained no classified material, only proof of corruption. The envelope from Roy was an added ace up her sleeve. The hearing room was packed. Journalists buzzed, senators and representatives whispered, and in the front row sat William, Roy, and Martha, whom Jasmine had invited as witnesses of support. Outside, Washington thrummed, traffic noise, distant protester chants, and the smell of wet asphalt after a brief rain. Jasmine stood before the committee, holding a folder with the new evidence. Her emerald green suit underscored her resolve, and the faint scent of jasmine perfume gave her strength. The committee chair, a Republican senator with a cold stare, began sharply. "Congresswoman Crockett, you've accused the president's administration of serious crimes. Do you realize your actions could be seen as undermining democracy?" Jasmine met his gaze, her voice steady but cutting. "Senator, democracy isn't silence in the face of injustice. It's the truth, even when it's inconvenient. I'm here not to accuse, but to present facts. And I'm not alone," She opened her folder and began reading the new evidence. Bank transactions linking officials to shady offshore accounts and testimony from an anonymous whistleblower confirming pressure on judges. The room listened in tense silence. Even the senator who tried to interrupt fell quiet when Jasmine handed copies to the committee. But the real moment came when she called Roy and Martha to speak. Roy, awkwardly holding the microphone, shared how he'd changed his mind after seeing the evidence. Martha added that her Dallas community had started its own investigation, checking local contracts tied to the administration. Their words, simple and heartfelt, struck a chord. Even journalists, jaded by political theater, scribbled furiously. When the hearing ended, the committee announced that the evidence review would continue, but the charges against Jasmine were temporarily suspended. It wasn't a victory, but it was a step forward. Dallas, 1 month later. The evening was warm, the sky above South Dallas glittering with stars. Jasmine stood in the same park where the hearings had taken place, but the atmosphere was different now. Instead of tension, hope filled the air. Locals had organized a Truth and Unity festival, with musicians performing and volunteers handing out food. The smell of grilled meat and cornbread mingled with fresh grass, and children's laughter rang out over the crowd's chatter. Jasmine took the stage, microphone in hand. Beside her stood Roy, Martha, William, and Layla. Behind them were dozens of volunteers who had joined the Truth movement. She looked out at the crowd. Older folks who remembered the civil rights era, young activists raised in the age of social media, and families just wanting a better future. "We haven't changed everything in a month," she began, her voice warm as the Texas sun. "But we've started. We've shown that truth can unite, even when they try to divide us. And I believe this is just the beginning." She paused, feeling a gentle breeze brush her face. Someone in the crowd raised a sign, "Crockett, our voice." Roy, standing nearby, unexpectedly took the microphone. "I was one of those who didn't believe her," he said, his voice shaky. "But she gave me a chance. And I want us all to give each other a chance." The crowd erupted in applause. Jasmine felt tears well up, but she smiled. She knew the fight wasn't over. The FBI was still investigating her documents, the White House was preparing new counterattacks, and the anonymous whistleblower had yet to reveal their identity. But in this moment, under the starry Dallas sky, she felt she'd done something profound. As the festival wound down, Jasmine lingered in the park, gazing at the stars. Layla approached, holding her phone. "Jasmine, a new post just came in on X, anonymous. They say they have more evidence. And they want to meet." Jasmine nodded, her heart racing again. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she was ready. The truth she'd begun to uncover had already changed not just her, but thousands around her. And this fire, once ignited, would not be extinguished.